Yeah. He bombed a wedding.
Multiple weddings, hasn't he?
You'd only have to bomb one for me to give a shit. You know, like, he bombed a wedding.
Yeah.
That's makes me sick to my stomach to think about, like, someone that I admired at one point and still have respect for sitting in a room saying, it's green light, baby. That's crazy. I could never.
Things just keep getting worse. We jump to 07, 08, the financial crisis and bailout. um, what are your opening
This is
thoughts to this?
my biggest. This is out of everything that's happened in the country since I've been alive and paying attention. This is probably the second worst. The worst being Donald Trump being elected president. Specifically the second time, but the first time was vile as well. Well, briefly, most people have heard about the financial crisis in 08, but if you are a listener that is not privy, I will be very brief here. The banks essentially packaged and sold a low quality product as a high quality product, and then built a large, one of the legs of our economy essentially on that low quality product. These are like package loan, or these are like mortgage package. I'm not a financial guy. But like essentially you would have like a subprime mortgage where like the likelihood of these people defaulting on their mortgages is maybe moderate or maybe high. They were packaged into a bunch of mortgages and they were sold as like a very low likelihood for people to default. Okay, so that's fraud, right? Like that's just lying. But they did it on like a large scale where like a lot of people getting loans for houses that the people who were providing the loans knew that these people were probably not going to be able to pay these bills, right?
Yes. Extremely reckless lending, tons of risky loans.
Yes. And that's part of it, but the bigger part of it is that they were then packaged into big groups, and basically like people were, I mean, like what Wall Street does, they bet on whether or not this stuff's going to do well or fail. And a lot of people, because they thought, these like investors thought that these were safe, secure packages, were betting money on it. I'm calling it betting, but they're like, you know,
sure.
They're betting on these things to succeed. And so there's a lot of money tied up in them. And then when we have an economic downturn in like a recession, these people are not paying their mortgages. The mortgages default. These people can't pay their bills. And these packages of mortgages start to kind of collapse on themselves. And the money wrapped up in them collapses as well. I might be kind of missing the exact vernacular, financial vernacular, but that's kind of what happened colloquially. And now, okay, that sucks, right? Who should pay for that? The people that gave out these fucking loans and the people that lied about the security levels of them. But who actually paid for it was me. It was my dad, was my best friend's grandparents. You know, we are still paying for it to this day. None of the people involved were arrested. Almost, I don't think anyone was really even indicted. No one went to prison. None of these banks had to close. None of these banks had to sell off their assets. Nothing. In fact, they took a bunch of taxpayer money to the tune of what? I don't even remember how much money was in the TARP. But this bailout package for the banks, the bailout wasn't for the American people. They didn't bail the American people out. I'll just use one example out of hundreds of thousands of examples. Everyone was affected by this, whether they had a house, whether they were renting, whether their retirement package was tied up in those types of investments. My best friend's grandparents had a retirement plan. You hear that?
Yeah, is that ice cream
Ice cream.
truck or something?
Yeah.
Nice.
That guy used to be a millionaire, and then the financial crisis happened.
Yeah.
Now
There
he's
you go.
driving that ice cream van. Um,
The bailouts, the government's argument was that these banks were too big to fail,
yeah,
and that they had to be saved to protect everyone else.
yeah,
That they were so large and interconnected that their failure would have destroyed the entire global economy.
yeah.
Um,
But we already know the
and
government lies about everything.
yeah,
The bailing out the banks, even like, okay, cool. So the banks are too big to fail. So let's arrest the criminals that have
yeah,
done these crimes and bail the banks out. But they didn't. These some of these guys got like $40 million. They called them golden parachutes.
golden parachutes. Yeah,
They were forced to resign, and their severance packages were like tens of millions of dollars. These are people who were responsible for like people's retirement funds drying up. Like people had to go back to work after retiring. People had to change their entire living circumstance after retiring. People had to not retire. You know, it screwed over. If you were an average working class American, the 2008 2009 financial crisis either ruined you or set you back decades. It was disgusting how they handled it. Now, this is probably partially why Obama gets elected, is because like we're in the middle of all this shit, and he's kind of preaching this hope, change message. He wasn't really saying like, oh, I'm going to hold the bankers accountable, because I don't think he ever planned on that, but he was like supposed to be like a new vision for the future. And we've just seen what the last 10 years held, and it was bullshit. It sucked. The Bush administration, by this point, Bush was terribly unpopular. Everyone had come to their senses about Iraq. Most people had come to their senses about Afghanistan. For the people that could tell the difference between most people to this day couldn't tell you the difference between Afghanistan and Iraq. They won't tell you. They don't know why we went.
Like how Bush was reelected with the it being during wartime. They say like there's a few key factors into being elected or reelected, and one of them is war, and another is the economy. He served his 2 terms. He can't be reelected, so we got Obama coming in and running, and the economy is going down the toilet. So
obviously, Bush was an idiot, and he drove our economy into the ground. The Republicans helped. The Democrats didn't try to stop them at all. The main focus of this is Republicans are bad, and the Democrats don't stop them. And they don't really try, because Democrats always do a better job campaigning off of how bad the Republicans are than they do campaigning off of how good they are. They would rather say, look how bad he is, I'm not that bad, than say, look how good I am. Because they're not good. They don't give a fuck about being good. They're never going to try to be good. All we can do is force them out of power. And this is also, so like getting back to the financial crisis, the Democrats forget the Republicans. The Republicans are disconnected from reality for a dozen different reasons. The Democrats displayed how disconnected from reality they were in supporting this legislation. Not all of them supported it, but when it came time to vote, not very many of them fought against it. So basically the banks get bailed out. And there was still time, I think, when Obama was elected, there was still time to stop it or to change it. You know what I mean? In the same way that like passing the ACA, the Obamacare thing, they watered it down. By the time it was done, it wasn't even really what he promised us during his campaign. He could have watered it down. He could have advocated. He could have gotten in front of the mic and tried to hold the people responsible, accountable. And he didn't. He didn't do any of those things. A feckless coward of a man. And sure, like he's going to go down in history as one of our better presidents, and he's going to have a legacy of like incremental change, but maybe not anymore. Maybe he's going to go down in history as the guy that allowed them to bail out the banks, the guy that bailed out the auto industry without bailing out the auto industry workers. without bailing out the American people,
Mm-hmm.
the guy that didn't hold the bankers accountable, the guy that didn't fight against the Tea Party, the guy that didn't keep Trump from getting elected, the guy that may have even
Mm-hmm.
helped Trump get elected. And that's where the second half of this episode comes in, which is the
Yes.
Obama years.
Everything we talked about the Bush administration and Republicans, some of the key problems here with the Democrats' capitulation. They voted for the Patriot Act and the Iraq War resolution, essentially giving the Bush administration permission for war and spying. They allowed the bank bailouts to pass without demanding strong rule against executive bonuses or prosecuting financial crimes, reinforcing political power of major banks. They used our taxpayer money, and they didn't even convict the people responsible.
Criminals.
And the Democrats were all part of this. Jump to Obama. Obama gets elected. What did like so? What were your thoughts like during that whole election, that campaign, and everything? Like, what was
I
what
was
was your
fighting
view
against my
of
dad the
Obama?
whole time.
Yeah.
I was fighting with my fucking dad the whole time because my dad is a racist. I've said this on the show before. I come from a long line of racists, unabashed, unapologetic, unrepentant racists. People who think that white people in this country should maintain and hold the majority of the power, no matter what. There's no sense in me pretending that's not the case. That is who my family used the N-word when I was growing up. I had black teachers since second grade. I knew that saying the N-word was bad when I was in second grade. I never said it. I don't even think I've ever said it singing along to songs. Never typed it in a fucking Call of Duty lobby, nothing. Since second grade. So, but I identified that I was an outlier in my family and that I had a different idea of what it meant to have a community from a very young age. And when I was 17, I think Obama was running, I was fighting with my dad. I was like, this is not like, I didn't think that Obama was like a good person necessarily, but I thought that his policies, I thought that like healthcare for all was a good thing. I thought that he was
the
like
promises he made.
Yeah, his platform was like appealing to me. I thought that we needed a big change. I had planned on going into the military and everything, and I didn't want to serve under Republicans. I saw how they treated the people in Katrina. I saw how we went to war for no reason. Like, I knew that by that point, I had cousins and uncles that had served repeated tours, and I just didn't think we needed more of that. I thought we needed new, different shit. And that was the main crux of his campaign, was that all of his rhetoric was steering towards hope and change for a better tomorrow.
Yeah. It was one of the most successful marketing campaigns of all time, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was fully in. And to this day, I would still, if you put me back in that situation and gave me the vote between him and McCain or him and who was the other guy he went against? Romney. Yeah, I'm picking Obama every time. That's like, I got to always keep going back to the fact that like, I'm a Democrat way before I'm a Republican, but I'm not a Democrat. But yeah, if I have to choose between a Democrat and a Republican, which I unfortunately do, I'll pick the Democrat. But I just wish I didn't have to. And that's part of why we're here, is to try and create like a type of discourse and a realistic reflection on the last 25 years of American politics that allows people to like, this is an option that is popular amongst people, to hate on the fucking Democrats and still realize the Republicans are worse. And a lot of people do that, but just not to the degree they should, and not for the reasons they should. A lot of the hate for the Democrats is for frivolous nonsense. But yeah, I was fully in. That was my first time being eligible to vote. Supported Obama the next election as well, even though I was pretty critical of Obama by that point. In 2012, I was in honor guard. in Arkansas. I went to pretty much every town in Arkansas doing funerals, and this was uh like right as he was running the second time. And there were, I've told you this before, hundreds, maybe thousands, but at least hundreds, high hundreds of signs saying, "Send the monkey back to Kenya." There were effigies with his likeness on them and hanging from nooses in people's yards. There were caricatures of him eating watermelons. There were every nasty sign you could think of and more, things I would never have thought of, um, all over the state of Arkansas. The Republicans had successfully captured the anger and vitriol of those average Americans that felt shunned and disenfranchised from the last sort of 10 to 12 years before that. Call it post 9/11 America. The Republicans had captured that, and the Democrats didn't give a fuck about even trying.
Mm-hmm.
In capturing that anger and fervor, the Republicans had also stoked the flames of racism happily, gleefully. You know, the Islamophobia was a part of it, but then getting into like the Katrina stuff and stoking the flames of like anti-black rhetoric and stuff like that, the Republicans had leaned fully into that, and we saw that later on with the Tea Party.
And
But
who was in
I
the
was still,
background saying, causing controversy with the
who was
nationality
the
of
one
Obama?
saying he was from Kenya? It was Donald Trump.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Donald Trump was on Twitter every single day saying, even after, we'd seen his birth certificate, we knew where he was from, obviously,
Yeah.
saying he was from Kenya, saying he didn't believe it. The birtherism started mainly with Donald Trump when it came to like the internet side of it. Donald Trump's always been a successful user of online hatred.
Yeah, Obama was, it was historic when he was elected. He's such a great speaker. He has an amazing presence. Now, anybody who's listening who is a ride or die Democrat who thinks that Obama is an absolute hero, in this next segment, you're really going to have to come to terms with your own moral compass and how that connects with your political stance.
In comparison to other presidents, yeah, Obama might be one of the best. Like, but that's a very low fucking bar. Like,
Yeah.
it's very low bar. As a person, in his personal life, Obama seems like a good dude to me. Seems like the type of person that I wouldn't mind being around.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like the type of guy you could have dinner with and have like a good conversation. He's smart. He's funny. Very competent when it came to like the levers of government, and all of those things are why I cannot give him a pass on his wrongdoing. I cannot give him a pass on his lying. I cannot give him a pass on his spinelessness, because we know, in the same way that we know that like a Liz Cheney knows better in relation to Republican voters, he knew better because he promised better, and he broke those promises. And if you make the American people a promise and you break that promise, then it's in my opinion, duty as a someone with love of country, a deep love of country, to hold you accountable for those lies and for those misgivings and for those, in some cases, crimes. Citizens United. It's a piece of legislation that was passed under Obama. A lot of people know about this, but probably our core sort of demographic we're reaching out to might not know much about it. Citizens United basically says that, in the same way that like I'm allowed to give to a campaign, a corporation is allowed to give to a campaign. A corporation is allowed to act as a voter, essentially.
Yeah. With billions and billions of dollars to back it.
Yes. So when you give to a campaign, your dollars are in competition with a corporation's dollars. So instead of an elected official or someone seeking to become an elected official saying like, I need to get all of the labor union people to donate to me, he can just say, I need to get that corporation's owners to donate to me. So you don't have to have Walmart employees don't have to want to vote for you if Walmart's owners want you to get elected.
Mhm.
So, and it might be very obvious to people why that's bad, but just
Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
sake of an argument, the types of legislation that a corporation will be lobbying for is much different than the types of legislation than a corporation's employee will be lobbying for. And we can probably do a full episode on like how much of an income disparity has happened since Citizens United. I'm willing to venture a guess that the separation goes from like it goes like it's been getting separate since the 70s, and then Citizens United happens and it gets crazy, astronomical. I'm willing to put money on that.
Yeah.
They can spend unlimited independent money, so that it doesn't even have to be necessarily the corporation's money. It's essentially like they can use corporations as a slush fund for their elections, and they no longer have the need to appeal. If I can get $10 billion from Walmart, what a astronomical 10 million or whatever, why do I need to get 500,000 from my voters? You know. Now, the Affordable Care Act. This was
Yes.
apart from like the amorphous messaging campaign that Obama had, his main like technical piece of legislation that he had proposed was a public option. It wasn't proposed as the Affordable Care Act yet. When he was running for office, it was a public option, was like one of the main things he talked about, was that essentially there would be a government funded insurance that everyone had access to. If you couldn't get your private insurance, you'd have this government one, the public option. And that being in competition with the insurance companies would lower the cost of those insurance companies. Now, that was kind of like the way he sold it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he planned on actually doing that and then got in and realized, oh, this is impossible. So I'm just going to capitulate to the Republicans who are saying I'm a monkey from Kenya. But that's what he did. He basically got in, dropped the public option completely from his insurance plan. He still added, I think 20 million people got insurance, but the insurance premiums skyrocketed. And the reason for that is because he allowed the Republicans to get their dirty, grimy little racist hands into every little bit of the bill. He changed and capitulated things. The Democrats folded when they should have stood strong. They offered sort of middle ground where there really wasn't a middle ground. And the Republicans, because they're willing to use the levers of government, used the levers of government to water down the Affordable Care Act such that it was kind of a bad bill by the end of it. There are good aspects. It's probably better than what we had before, but maybe not. with the price of pharmaceuticals and with the prices of the insurance premiums and with the amount of money that insurance companies have made off of it, dude, if you look at the profits for insurance companies, the quarterly profits from an insurance company make me sick to my stomach. Luigi Mangione is probably going to be found guilty of murder. But Luigi Mangione was pissed off for good reason. Like, his anger is justified. He went about it in probably the wrong way. No, he's mad at a system that's evil. It's evil to make that much money off of the health and well-being of your countrymen. It's evil, pure evil. The amount of money that they make, even if it was half as much, it would still be evil. But it's not half as much. It's fucking unbelievable amounts of money they make.
It's something that everybody can agree with too. Like we were talking about a long time ago.
Bipartisan issue for voters.
How many people have any of us ran into that disagreed with these major insurance companies, like they agreed with them or that they didn't like what
but since Citizens United was passed, these insurance companies get to participate in the electoral process they have more access to the electoral process than the average voter. They have more influence over the elected officials than the average voter because of Citizens United, another Obama era piece of legislation. So it's twofold. He let them into the electoral process, And then he passed this piece of legislation that benefits them. So now they have like this revolving door of access to the levers of power. Yeah, and it goes for basically every piece of smaller legislation that took place during Obama. Was like, imagine having a pair of aces. They flop two aces, and then somebody bets, it's two aces and a two of clubs, and then somebody bets, all in, and you're like, oh God, they must have a good hand. Bitch, you have four aces. You don't have to fold. You don't have to split the pot. You don't have to do fuck all with these motherfuckers. Yeah, he had four aces in his hand. He had a royal flush, and he folded to a pair of nines repeatedly. Repeatedly, he did this. He failed to fight. Now, he had great speeches. He would go on and he would humiliate the Republicans in a speech into a microphone. But when it came time to like convince the American people or to keep the Democrats in line, he failed. He did not fight for the types of legislation that we needed. And he broke promises that he made to the American people. He broke promises to me. I voted for Obama twice because he promised me shit. And then he broke those promises.
He gets reelected. During that election, do you think he was elected more on, his side of things, or was it the failing of Romney's campaign?
I think that he was like, the reason he kept capitulating to Republicans throughout his first term was to keep moderates that were because the moderate people that he was like, the rare moderate person that is like, oh, cool, I'm glad that he compromises. I'm glad that he compromises with racists. I'm glad that he compromises with extremists. I'm glad that he folds things that are not to my benefit. Those people vote. They vote. And he knew that. I think that he made a calculated steps at every step of the way. He was much more concerned with how people will look at him in 20 years than he was in getting the legislation he promised passed. And part of that sort of forward thinking mentality, like deep into the future thinking he had, helped him in the election and the electoral process generally. I think he was pretty unimpeachable when it came to like the actual legislation that got passed. Adding 20 million people to the healthcare system, getting them insurance helped. He did good things. Yeah, I'm not some person that thinks he's just a horrible person overall, but like he lied and he was spineless. Romney was pretty bad as a candidate.
As far as I followed, I don't think he stood a chance at all.
Yeah, maybe not statistically. Yeah. But yeah, I don't think Romney wasn't Romney wasn't willing to, had Romney leaned into the racists and generated the same types of racist voters that Trump generated, Romney could have beat him. But Romney wasn't willing to stoop low like that. Like a lot of Republicans at that time were racists. They were happy to vote for racist policies. They were happy to participate in sort of the pseudo racism in like the legislative process, but they wanted that facade of dignity.
Two horses that they backed in a row lost to Obama, and both of them refused to go that route.
Exactly.
And then look what happened after Obama was
and
done.
they tried again, because the Republicans knew that from a legislative perspective, from like an actual passing laws and getting things done perspective, they didn't need a racist candidate to do that. They were going to get the racist shit. They were going to get the corporate stuff passed because the Democrats were never going to fight them on anything. They knew that. But so they didn't. I mean, why would you need to fight too hard against Obama when he's giving you everything you want anyway? Right. You know what I mean? So like he didn't keep them from getting any of the legislation they wanted passed, really. The Tea Party got what they wanted for the most part. He was doing everything in foreign policy that a Republican would have done. He let them water down every bill that he did propose. He let them water it down such that they knew in the future it would be so bad for Democrats that Democrats wouldn't think of it as a win, and that it would be watered down enough for Republicans to think of it as a win for them. So like, there's like that whole angle of it. But yeah, I think also like Obama was just a nice representative of the country. And at that time, before Trump, we really did still view the presidency as like the executive of the country, like kind of not strictly representative, but like his biggest job was being a representative for us. And I think in that way, he was pretty widely admired, and still
For
is
sure.
as
Yeah.
a statesman. That's the word, a
Yeah.
statesman. You know, and in being a statesman, he was great. As far as like the legislation he fought for and the legislation he allowed to be passed under his leadership, the exact opposite, a disgrace.
Yeah. And we're jumping into his second term. He gets reelected. Let's talk about his drone warfare. Is this the worst thing he's done?
The Edward Snowden thing is the worst thing he did.
Okay. So we'll be getting to that next, but
Yeah,
this is
the drone.
pretty bad.
I'll be honest with you. Drone warfare, it's horrible. It's kind of like the most cowardly way you can fight a war. But if you are going to fight a war, if I'm fighting you and I have a gun and you have a sword, I'm going to shoot you. Like, you know, I'm not going to be like, "Oh, well, he's only got a sword, so I'm going to pull out mine." Fuck no. I'm going to dispatch you as efficiently as possible with as much safety for myself as possible.
Yes. Yeah, I think everybody would agree that would you rather have that sort of remote option or send in 50 soldiers
Right.
and some of them might not come back.
Exactly. And none of them will come back the same up here.
10 out of 10 you're going to choose that option. So
yeah. Like in that way, I'm not as fucked up about the drone shit. What I'm fucked up about the drone shit is the same thing with the Bush administration, is the same thing with the Trump administration, is the same thing with the Biden and the second Trump administration. The overreach of the executive power. The executive is to run the military, but it's not his job to decide when we use it and where we use it. That's for Congress. That's the Senate is supposed to vote on that. Historically, obviously, after post 9/11, they fucking just expanded the powers of the president to essentially mean whatever. If you think it's bad, you can bomb them. That's kind of what we have right now. And
yes,
so he
the
was
rules
doing
of
that.
engagement are being warped or just thrown out the window.
In that way, yeah, it's really, really heinous. And he bombed a wedding.
The civilian casualties is the worst part of all.
Yeah. He bombed a wedding.
Multiple weddings, hasn't he?
You'd only have to bomb one for me to give a shit. Like he bombed a wedding.
Yeah.
That's makes me sick to my stomach to think about like someone that I admired at one point and still have respect for sitting in a room saying, "It's green light, baby." That's crazy. I could never. Because you know what? Use the drones to follow. Oh, that's who we're looking to get. He's at a wedding. Follow him. Just watch what car he gets into. Wait till he's somewhere where there's no kids. Wait till he's somewhere where there's not a fucking wedding. Because are the people getting married guilty? Are the families guilty? Because even if you had one of these katana missiles that they have now, where you just drop it on the guy and it kills him pretty much only. You know the one I'm talking about? I think it's like a modified Hellfire or something like that, where like blades come out of it and you just kind of smash one dude with it. Even if you did that, no casualties, just that one guy dies at a fucking wedding. Oh, how was your wedding? My uncle, I hadn't talked to him in 20 years, had no idea that he was part of some organization, but I guess he was a terrorist. My uncle got turned into pink mist in front of my sister's kids. How do you live with?
That's the best case scenario.
Yeah, and that's not what happened. Like, like it's just sickening, man. It's sickening, and it's not the worst thing he did, in my opinion. It's really fucking gross, and that's what he did publicly. So like, you can only imagine, like, the reason that he didn't close Guantanamo is because he got in there and he was like, it's not so bad to have a place you can send your enemies. Like, like there's this like nefarious side of all of us. Like they say, like inside you is two wolves, and whichever one you feed is the one that lives. Inside me is three wolves and they're all eating sandwiches. Like I don't do that bullshit. Like you don't get to be this like respected statesman and bomb weddings, overreaching your own power as the president. But while a lot of his reasoning for like not fighting the Republicans harder is he was like, oh, well, it's not in my purview as president to like influence that. It's not in my purview as president to like influence the attorney general or have my hands in that cookie jar. And then you do that kind of shit. Nah. And dude, if the guy that you killed is evil, cool. But you're telling me you had to kill him at a wedding? That's the only time he'll be in public. Okay, well, we see him now. We can follow him. We have fucking satellites. We have planes that fly in the upper atmosphere with like basically telescopes looking down at the ground. I mean, you just can't tell me there's not another option after I served in special operations during that fucking time period. But it's not the worst thing he did. I think on his campaign website, he had, and this was something that throughout the whole Bush administration, there were whistleblowers coming forward. And they were getting like, sometimes they were getting their fucking asses handed to them. Sometimes you never heard about them again. Sometimes they were journalists and their cars ended up, some guy that had like a fucking Nissan Altima ended up driving 130 miles an hour into a pole with a briefcase full, with a laptop full of incriminating information about the administration or some general or something. That happened. And so these whistleblowers were risking their fucking lives to tell the American people the truth about their own government. And what Obama had on his, one of the main things that was inspiring to me was whistleblower protection. If you come forward with incriminating information about what we're doing, you will be protected because you're doing the right thing. That's the right thing to do. If you're working at McDonald's, we're picking the patties up off the floor and putting them in burgers, and you go tell management, hey man, listen, I don't want to be a snitch, but I also don't want to serve people fucking foot burgers. We need to fix what's going on back there because it's gross. Mm-hmm. You're doing the right thing. If your manager says, good on you, I appreciate you being honest. I appreciate you actually taking this place seriously and having a little bit of pride and dignity with and integrity with your job. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to fix what's going on. That's what a good manager does. A good manager doesn't go, hey, you're a little fucking snitch and it might cost me more money I'm going to have to pay more money if I don't pick these burgers up off the floor. That's a patty I'm wasting. That's what a piece of shit does. That's what a scumbag does. So when he said whistleblower protections, I thought that's good. That's cool. Yeah. That's actually badass because it's the same type of patriotism you and I are always talking about, where it's like, I don't give a fuck about approving or disapproving of an administration or of a person because of who they are or what they are. What I give a fuck about is doing the right thing by my country, by my countrymen, by the values that were instilled in me through the historical context that I've read about, through the heroes of the past that gave us the opportunity to say what we're saying now. This whole thing exists because there were real heroes that really put their fucking lives on the line.
Cut to 2013. We have Edward Snowden. That whole incident. He was a former National Security Agency sort of guy. Was he some kind of analyst or?
Essentially, because of the Patriot Act, we're dragnetting all this data, cell phone records, but more than the Patriot Act approved, and more specific information than the Patriot Act approved. And we're using it in ways the Patriot Act did not approve. And so he's up there. This dude, he's got probably what I'm assuming is like the most, it's called like a TS-SCI security clearance, compartmentalized top secret clearance. Basically that means in the job duties that he has access to anything relevant to that task he has clearance for. Like his job is what gives him the need to know basis to sift through this information. And in doing that, you have to be pretty much an unimpeachable American. You have to have a financial record that's clear. You have to have they interview your friends and family from high school. They interview your college roommate. They interview your cousin. They call everyone. They call your old jobs. They do a thorough check to make sure that you are the type of person that can be trusted with one of these clearances. So, and you take an oath. You don't take an oath to defend your boss. You don't take an oath to defend the administration. You don't take an oath to defend the job you're doing. You take an oath to the Constitution to uphold and defend it from enemies, foreign and domestic. Especially domestic, man. They don't jot that shit down for their fucking enjoyment or for their entertainment. That shit's important because we have the capacity to have enemies internal. That's a real thing. And if the enemy is domestic, then it's your duty, you're oath bound. You've taken an oath, presumably a serious one for most people, to defend it and to uphold that oath. And listen, I'm not going to sit here and say Edward Snowden is like a hero by any stretch of the imagination. I don't know that. But what I will say is he risked his life. He risked a high-paying job. He risked his freedom. He risked his reputation. And mostly he risked the high-paying job. He risked a cush life doing easy work to tell the American people the truth, because what he found was so damning. What he found was so in opposition to his oath. He couldn't sleep at night without doing the right thing, or what he perceived as the right thing. Now, what Obama had promised us was that someone like Edward Snowden would be protected.
Let's talk a little bit more about what he leaked, like what he smuggled out, the stuff that he discovered that he needed people to see. So, I mean, yeah, like you were talking about with the whole Patriot Act problem, programs that collected metadata, such as numbers dialed and duration of calls for millions of phone subscribers. Yeah, the NSA was collecting records of almost every phone call made in the U.S. every single day. With PRISM, the internet company access, the NSA had secret deals with major tech companies. They were secretly tapping into huge fiber optic cables that carry the world's internet traffic. They were basically installing a hidden digital vacuum cleaner to suck up and store massive amounts of the world's internet data for later searching, and it completely violating the human, the public trust in your own sort of basic human rights as a person to privacy, and they
What's
were
that document he took the oath to?
in the Constitution.
What's the Fourth Amendment to it?
Protection against unlawful search and seizures.
Yeah,
and they were not doing that. They were completely going against your constitutional rights.
They were dragnetting everything.
Absolutely
and more everything. and more. And here's the thing. If he takes all that information and he says, here you go, public, here's everything. Yes. You could get people killed, right? Because there's CIA assets, there's all this other stuff. There's tons of stuff that's damaging. So what did he do? He released it through a journalist.
Yeah,
he gave it to a journalist. And then the journalist had everything approved, basically had everything reviewed to make sure that it wasn't going to put anyone in direct danger. So it's like the dude broke the law. Sure. What have we told you? Like, what have we talked about with the law though? The law means fuck all to the just man. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. In times of deep injustice, the only place for a just man is in a prison cell. That's Thoreau. And Thoreau's a hero. So maybe Snowden, did some wrong, but that's the type of thing that the president should say, hey, this dude is shining a light on something that we're doing that violates the Constitution. And this dude, yeah, he did some wrong. I'm going to pardon him. We're going to call it water under the bridge, and we're going to fix the problems that more importantly, we're going to fix the
Yes.
problems that he's shown light on. Because for
Uh-huh.
whether or not he's a hero or not, I don't give a fuck. But what's wrong is the shit that he showed we were doing. That shit is wrong. That shit is crazy. That shit is unconstitutional.
Now, did he get absolved? And did they go through everything and say, "Oh yeah, this is bad"? Not
No, this
really.
motherfucker lives basically in a
Yes.
he's in house arrest in Russia or something.
Yeah, yeah, it's a perfect. Yeah, it's where is he still living to this day?
Yeah.
Um,
This is the type of dude, if this dude is smart enough to steal from the NSA, first of all, then cares about his country enough to do it. He's not releasing the shit to fucking Russia. He's not giving it to China. He's not giving it to Saudi Arabia or whatever. He's giving it to a journalist so that the journalist can do their journalistic due diligence and release the relevant information without endangering specific parties. You have an opportunity. Obama had an opportunity with him, but it would have made the Republicans very mad. It would have made the mainstream media very mad. And so he didn't. That's the worst thing he did, man. He turned his back on patriotism, in my opinion.
he did, and he defended these surveillance programs. He had to have been fully aware of everything
I
going
think he was
on.
scared these surveillance programs, the three-letter agencies that run them and are associated with them, would kill him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, who do you, I mean, of course. Of fucking course, because it's going to come with accountability. If you actually change these things, if you actually shine a light on what he exposed, it's going to come with accountability.
But
You
like,
try to hold those
if
motherfuckers accountable, and they're going to kill you.
yeah, even with that in mind, he holds some of the biggest sort of amounts of power in our country. If he can't do that, who can? Like,
Dude, they're too
if
big to
he
fail,
can't
bro.
do what? No.
They're too big to fail.
Yeah. So that's the worst thing, you think, is that it was.
In my opinion, yes.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that I'll have a nasty taste in my mouth about that for as long as I live.
Will that, like, this is a little sort of tangent. I forget who was talking about this on online that I saw a clip of a friend and sort of a fellow colleague of Nick Kroll was talking about whether or not you would shake George Bush's hand if he just happened to come across you on the street. Would you shake his hand? Nick Kroll says he would absolutely not. Uh, and then I think his friend was saying that he would, out of just social awkwardness of, like, out of the pressure of being confronted with him. You would probably absolutely not shake his hand, I bet. George Bush.
Buddy, if I'm in
With
a room, if I'm in shouting distance of any politician you can think of, I'm shouting like
yeah.
disparaging curse words at
Uh-huh.
them. The
And
most creative shit I can think of in the moment. I'm one step shy of throwing the shoe at him like that guy did.
where's the line with Obama where you would not do that? So was that like, we talked about some of the stuff
If there are
leading up to
cameras
this,
around,
but
if there were cameras around, I would shout horrible things at him. If I just saw him on the sidewalk in New York or something like that, I would be like, I would give myself a moment to think of something good, and then I would shout it out at him. and hopefully it's on camera and it goes, because because the only way we can get back to reality, back to a shared reality, is to exist in a shared reality. And the reality is that he did horrible shit. He lied to the American people. He broke promises, you know. Now, if he was like, "Hey, saw your comments about me, would love to have a private dinner and discuss the shit like a man," I would happily have dinner.
yeah,
But it
absolutely.
would, dude, I had a dream. I told my wife about this. I actually have had a dream. I like a sleep medication. I had a dream about riding in a golf cart with him like all day. I don't know what the content was. And in
Okay.
the dream, I was like bringing this stuff up. I was like, why did you say this and then do that? You know, there's a J. Cole verse about meeting Obama, and he in the verse he talks about like asking Obama, you know, what the fuck, kind of, and Obama's like, hey man, it's politics, it goes slow. Like that would not be good enough. I would have I have secondary and third level questions to all of these issues that I want answers to. I want accountability for. And
Hmm.
if I get the opportunity to, in a private discourse, have a conversation, yeah, I would love to have that conversation like a man to man, realistic conversation about the mechanisms that caused these shortcomings. Um, if I just see this motherfucker on the sidewalk, or if I'm at like some event and he shows up, nah, fuck no. I will take any opportunity to shine a light on the problems in our country. And one of the main problems is that someone like that is viewed as one side of the spectrum and someone like Trump is viewed as the other. When the reality is, him and Trump are very close to the same side of the spectrum, and the American people are on the other end of the spectrum. That's the reality, is that there's
Yeah,
an
yeah.
oligarchical class in our nation that runs nearly everything from our media to our industry to our politics. And most American people, especially the big people that are politically involved and voters, are not in that class. That's the problem. And yeah, now when it comes to George Bush, I would I would let him put his hand out just so I could smack it. I would go to jail for simple battery just so I could smack his hand out of the way. Or I would if he's this old now, I would just squeeze his hand so as hard I would try to break it. I'd be like, and I have a
That's
grip.
kind of
I'm a
like
woodworker, baby. I got a grip
that
on me.
reminds me of Shane Gillis's joke about Biden, about he might be the first president you could kill with a punch.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
You could accidentally get close.
Yeah,
You could somehow get close to him enough. You could sock him in the stomach, and then he'll be down
he'd be
forever.
dead. Yeah, yeah. No, I would never shake George Bush's hand. Like I said, I'm one step away from throwing shoes at that motherfucker. I
Hey,
mean,
he's had
he's a
them
war
thrown
criminal.
before.
Yeah, he's a war criminal. I doubt he can dodge him as well now, and I could throw harder than that.
Get that steel toe spinning just right.
Yeah, I could really fling that mother, because the thing is, you got to have the shoe back like this. You got to have the tub of the boot back here. You
Yeah,
throw
the
it by
weight.
you really fling that motherfucker. It looked like a
All right.
boomerang.
Moving on, in 2014, we talked about it a little bit. He didn't close Guantanamo.
Yeah, because he's a
Why?
liar.
Like, what the fuck? That's crazy.
Because, dude, I'm telling you, I think that these presidents get into office. I think that they get the non-classified briefings, and I think that there are implicit threats being made by three-letter agencies, basically saying like, yeah, you could try that, but your political career and maybe your life is over if you do that.
Yeah. It just
Because there's no good reason to
he
keep
made
going.
the promise to close it, and he didn't. Leaving it a permanent symbol of a legal and moral failure of his administration.
Yeah. Things like that, in
He's
my opinion, are the legacy we need to focus on as like guys that I don't call myself a leftist necessarily.
Yeah.
I'm but I do think I'm more progressive. Like I believe in like legislation that moves us into the future with sort of everyone in mind.
Hmm.
Um, and in that way, I'm like progressive. So like our job as forward thinking individuals is to hold the past accountable. And if we view the Obama administration with these like rose tinted glasses, we're setting ourselves up for legislative and electoral failure in the future and economic
Hmm.
failure as well. He cannot be the status quo for success. And it's really important for us to focus on stuff like that. And the next one we're going to focus on is also like
Yes.
crazy.
We can even move into that. 2016 Dakota Access Pipeline. Like as far as I remember, he seemed to be a president. Like if we're talking about broken promises, he seemed to be very pro environmental policies of trying to keep our Earth safe from fossil fuels and all the sort of dangerous pollution that humans cause. This is just completely goes against all of that. He approves the pipeline, reinforced the idea that corporate interests and fossil fuels. We're talking about big companies just capitulating to these major organizations and
He started
constantly
out his
ways to
administration by giving them more
yeah
electoral power, and he ended his
they
administration by giving them more physical power.
he gave them more. He put them above all the environmental concerns he promised to abide by, and it broke treaty rights of indigenous communities.
Yeah,
um
that's that part of it is like there's the mechanical side of it, like what you were saying first, which is like the environmentalism going against like all of these sort of ecosystem advocates, people who are like, hey, we live in a biosphere and you got to protect that biosphere because
yeah
we're part of the biosphere. Like
uh-huh
like these would be considered smart people. These would be considered good people. These would be considered like heroes going against the most powerful organizations on planet Earth that are actively burning it to the ground. They
yeah
don't
if
give a
you're
fuck.
if you're living in a tent, you don't set the tent on fire.
Exactly. Now, that's that side of it. By that point, I was expecting nothing less from him. But
Yeah.
the side of it where like these indigenous cultures, the few that still exist, the few that have persevered through genocide, diseases, active theft of their land, treaties broken, the few that still exist are saying, hey, this is sacred, hallowed ground for us. Don't put an oil pipeline through it. He's like, fuck you. I mean, like, what else can you phrase that as? He's just like, yeah, I don't care about that because I'm the last in a long line of oath and treaty breakers. What else am I supposed to do? How are we going to get more oil? We need more oil. Like, I don't give a fuck about oil, bro. You know, like, we don't need more oil. We need less oil. We need to build an infrastructure in our society that uses fossil fuels less. We already subsidize the fossil fuel industry with our tax dollars to the tune of, I don't even know money. It doesn't matter. It's just nobody even cares about money anymore. It's like, oh, a billion or a trillion or a million. It's all the same. It's just a bunch of zeros. No, it's not all the same. We give them so much money and that's all money we don't use to actually support our real infrastructure. If it's an industry that requires subsidies, then it's an industry that shouldn't exist, at least not in the manner that it currently does. If it's an industry that needs subsidies to continue existing, or if it's an industry that needs subsidies to make its product viable, then the product isn't viable. The industry isn't viable. It's that simple. You know, I don't know what do you tell that? And not only are they taking the subsidies in the form of our fucking tax dollars and in the form of tax breaks and everything else, but they are trying to use public land now. They're actively going through like sacred ground for these few indigenous peoples that still exist. And if you look it up, the Dakota Access Pipeline has had already one major spill and a bunch of minor spills. So it's like the promises that they made that it would be safe and wouldn't leak and everything, that's not even true. These people are ruining our environment and our ecosystem. And, you know, it's sort of like fucking hippie and hokey to say it these days because it's such a lost cause. But like, we only get one environment. We only get one ecosystem. We will not be able to go back from some of these decisions. It's already, the damage is done. There's no fixing some of it. You're not going to make like the fucking white rhinos not coming back, baby. They can clone it, maybe. I don't know. But like,
I don't know. Yeah,
you know, like
that's
what the
still
fuck?
yeah.
The temperature is not going to fucking get fixed once the temperature in the ocean starts rising anymore. Like that, it's on a ramp. You know, it's not like it doesn't just go up and then we stopped producing, and so it stops. No, the shit is ramping up.
I mean, we started this podcast to tell the truth, and the truth is, Democrats and Barack Obama, especially, was deeply, deeply flawed. And a lot of people don't see that. They are, they have their blinders on about it, or just completely ignorant to what was really going on in his entire administration. And you have to look at all sides of it. You can't just, as much as it would be nice to just live a happy, ignorant life of, this is a great man who says great things. The truth is much darker. And
Yeah.
so to kind of wrap this up with Obama's administration, his approach was often criticized for choosing to play nice instead of directly confronting the aggressive Republican opposition. A failed accountability, prioritizing economic stability over criminal charges, institutionalizing, expanding drone warfare, expanding and unchecked power of the presidency, underestimating division, continued hope for bipartisan work allowed the Republicans to successfully obstruct his agenda, leading to public disappointment and rise of political backlash seen in the 2016 election.
And the worst of all of that, out of all of that, the worst out of everything was that instead of taking the base he created in '08, that that sort of real foundation of young voters, and growing it and creating like an actual coalition of critical thinking young adults that wanted a better future, he sort of crushed it and splattered it out into all different directions. And all of these people that would have otherwise become good voting Democrats, if had the Democrats followed through on their promises, the promises that he made, he took that entire coalition and just completely ruined it. And that's what led to Trump. So out of everything that he did, is that the worst, maybe the worse than even like the Snowden thing, is that he helped get Trump elected.
There is no saving that what had happened or occurred. It is destroyed. It is dead. It is gone. We have to start from scratch, because anybody who's sort of clinging on to those last aspects of the Democratic Party, or just what they believed to be good strategy or approach or perspective on everything, is not working, never worked, and we gotta switch it up, or else
We continue this descent into fucking bedlam.
yeah.
That's like the Mamdani win in New York is cool, good for New York,
Yeah.
probably great for New York City. But we are even seeing to this day the Democratic establishments, like, it's almost like they're afraid of winning. It's like they're afraid of being successful, because that would mean they have to govern. Like, I don't think the Democrats are terribly interested as a party in having a large scale national coalition of people that are engaged with their platform. I think they're interested in squeaking by victories in a few key districts and having a slight majority in the Senate and a slight majority in the House, so that they don't have to be bothered with like actual institutional and like real radical change in the way the system operates. I don't think they want radical change, because I think that the funding apparatus for the Democratic Party would be detrimental to their funding apparatus for things to change for the regular American worker. If things get better for the American worker, corporations are going to make less money. More of the money that corporations generate has to go to American workers. That's it. And if that happens, the corporations that are funding the Democrats are then going to have to go to those people and appeal to them. And I just don't think they're interested. That's the overarching reason that we're doing this. This episode specifically, the podcast is meant as kind of like an outreach into counter programming for the slop in the algorithm that young men are getting all of the time. But this episode specifically is a hope and a prayer that we can look at the Democratic Party rationally with criticism and force them. No, they're not going to change without serious pressure from their voters. They will never change. They have to be forced. And this is part of that first step in that process, is understanding their misdeeds and misgivings in the past.
And having said all of this very harsh and real criticism of the Democratic Party, Republicans are still worse.
Yeah. We always have to end. Yeah, we always have to end criticism
Yeah.
of that party.
Listen,
Being like, we are not
after-
Republicans. Like, I'm not
No.
interested. I don't want anything to do with it. They're a lost cause at this point. There's no redeeming a bunch of insurrectionist criminals.
No, absolutely not. And we're not any kind of centrist. That's just nonsense at this point. We're not trying to like, stay out of picking sides. We're on one far end of this, the spectrum of insanity. Anything, right of that is absolute chaos. So if you think that we're in the middle of any of that, you're sadly mistaken and completely misconstrued. So hopefully everybody can take that with a grain of salt.